Fuck you. Oh my god.
I'll check guy's video on you. Oh, the Samuel dude. There's just like nothing to. 90% of the video is just him reading the ICJ thing. Or the Samson, not Samuel.
At a time when Israel
Why are you banning so many people on Bridges criticism? I'm not banning people on criticism. If you want to have like a critical thing or whatever, that's fine. But like the whole point is, listen, all I want to do is get on an episode and then iterate and then do that. That's it. It's very simple. But people will see like the first episode like, oh my god, this is horrible. It's never changing. Blah blah blah. So I just permaban you. It's easy. You don't have any value to the community. There's no point in like your criticism is worthless. Like I just ban it. It's so easy. Like if you think it's legitimate criticism to type in a subreddit like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. It's never gonna change. Oh my god. Then just die. Kill yourself and then get banned. It's so easy. Boom. So easy.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, what's up?
It was cool to meet you in person in Ohio. I
Yeah,
don't know if you
I'm a
remember
cool
me.
person.
Yeah.
What's up?
Yeah, I had some disagreements. Actually, it was cool. It was exactly kind of what you were going over, except I had some better quote mind quotes I wanted to get your thoughts on. Just pasting you into my stream. Okay, so I had a few things I want to go over. Polling data, human shields. I watched your conversation with Joe. I was wondering if you looked at the article I sent you on the IDF targeting that particular journalist. If you're
I might
familiar
have,
with
but I
that
don't remember
overall.
it.
Yeah, and then yeah, I had a bunch of quotes that I mined. So I don't know if one of those you want to start with. I guess the polling data actually. So I was curious just which particular polls you were looking at in terms of if Palestinians want to fight, if they want one state versus two state. Because when I talked to you last time, you quoted me some kind of old polls that weren't really
I don't
yeah,
think they were old at all. I think they were pretty recent.
from like
It's
2008.
Oh, I don't know what those are from. There's a site that I don't remember what it was called. Forethought might have it. There's an abbreviation for this. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? It's PCPSR. That might be it. PCPSR. Palestinian Public Opinion Polls. I think this is the largest Palestine public polling thing. I think. Here, I'll just throw you a random link and then you can search from here, I guess.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's great. I just wanted to be kind of up to date in my head in terms of what you were looking at for that. Because I know you've talked a lot before about being
There you go.
that people should be pretty skeptical of how polls will translate into action as well. So just being kind of careful around polls and being too concrete.
Sure. Yeah.
I know. So I was thinking about this when I was watching you talking to Ben Shapiro. That it seems like you, as a debater, have a preference for standing on whatever ground you feel like you can defend more firmly. And so if it's not 100% known exactly where Palestinians stand, but there's some polls that say, oh, maybe they want to fight, maybe they don't want a two-state, then that's a little bit more defensible rather than arguing for the position of we actually don't really know. We don't have the proper polling to say with any certainty. What do you think about that situation? Is that a fair?
I don't even know what the question is. So how do I don't know, or we don't know what Palestinians want because we only have some polling data to say as much, or?
Yeah, but if you're in a debate or you're talking to Ben Shapiro, you obviously don't want to look weak or like you don't really know what's going on. But to argue for the position of doubt is a little tougher. But I think in this case, it's probably a good position to argue for rather than we know Palestinians, say this or say that.
I'm not sure. I mean, polling data is just a snapshot of what a population thinks in response to a polling question at a particular point in time. It's not determinative of what a population will support or what's politically or socially and militarily possible. But I mean, like, you can speak pretty confidently about the polling data. You just have to be careful, I guess, about the conclusions you draw from the polling data. But
Yes. So conclusions like Palestinians would have to go through a major shift before they'd be less radical or more willing to accept a two-state solution, something like that. I'm trying to think of general statements that I've heard you say.
yeah, I don't know as much if that's true anymore. Maybe that's not necessarily true, and instead they just need like a really important, brave leader that is willing to come out and make some big deals, and maybe the population would shift significantly if like a brave leader actually came out and figured something out. Maybe. But,
Yeah. Or if there was some really, really good faith looking plan out of Israel to create a Palestinian state, then maybe that would immediately have some kind of impact toward like a more hopeful view.
Maybe. I don't know what that state would have to look like at this point, but
Sure. Okay, so let me let me go to the quote mining then, I guess. So I was starting to look through. I was like, oh, we all have heard of like the Smotrich and the Ben Gvir kind of quotes that were kind of unhinged, and we're like, oh, Nakba 2023, maybe we should drop an atomic bomb on Gaza, this kind of crazy stuff. And I kept hearing this like, oh, we shouldn't freak out about these quotes because it's like, okay, there's some crazy people saying some crazy stuff. If some American congressman were saying some crazy stuff, I'd be like, oh, okay, it's one congressman, whatever. This doesn't characterize American position. But just to name the people that I've seen now, it's like agriculture minister, finance minister, minister of national security, tourism minister, minister of construction and housing, the head of the opposition party, and the vice prime minister are all like kind of high positions of authority that have all said crazy stuff. I can give you.
Yeah, so here,
names and
this is the
quotes.
issue that, and this is just an optically losing debate because the genocide argument is literally the most soy-infused argument of all of mankind. This is how it should go, and maybe the whole world will change because none of the stuff, nobody actually gives a fuck about any of the actual laws or rules or whatever anymore. This is how it should go, okay? Genocide requires the special intent, okay, to destroy a people in whole or in part of like a particular ethnic group, a particular national group. The genocidal intent can't just be a war or military intent, even if the war or military intent is incredibly extreme. And the problem is that in this particular case, people are incapable of separating those two things out. I'm not saying it's impossible that there are people that have made quotes, even high up in power, that seem genocidal in nature. But the problem is that like somebody will take a quote of like an Israeli high up person saying like, we need to nuke Gaza, fuck these people. And, people are like, oh, well, that's genocide. And it's like, I don't think that's genocide. Even if you were to kill every single Palestinian person, I don't think that would necessarily be genocide because you're looking for the special intent of genocide. Just like when we nuked Japan, that wasn't genocide. Just like when we bombed Dresden, that wasn't genocide. Just like when tens of millions of Soviets or whatever were being killed by Germans and Soviets when they were marching, that wasn't genocide. None of these things, the Civil War in the United States was not genocide. None of these things were genocide. Even though it involves war and a mass amount of civilian loss of life and people who are trying to kill or defeat like other countries, the question is always like, is the goal of one particular country to actually destroy a whole people? Is that the goal? And the fact that the military operation that's happening right now is starting in a response to an attack already severely undercuts that claim.
Sure.
Severely undercuts.
Sure, of course.
Because now the problem is what's happening is every single quote that's being given, the question is, is this like a quote that's expressing an intent for genocide? Or is this a quote where it's like, we really want to destroy this country? Like, we want to destroy these people, they attacked us, blah, 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 blah. Like, is it actually genocidal? Or is it like, is this war? Because I think that if you look at the statements on both sides by Ukrainians and Russians, you could very easily say, oh, this is genocidal. Oh, but it's not genocidal. It's two countries at war with each other.
Can I didn't want to get into too much details because I mostly agree with what you're saying, but can you think of a quote from some like high Ukrainian official that was on the level of like maybe we should wipe out all the people from Russia, something like that?
I bet that if I dig through quotes, I bet I can find statements that have been made by people high up in Ukrainian military leadership that either refer to people as orcs or laugh at like Russian soldiers getting killed, or that make comments about how they want to be able to bomb. And so I'm almost positive I can find this. I can't think of any in particular off the top of my head, but I'm sure I can go and find. Like, there's like whole subreddits where people are, like, making fun of Ukrainian people are making fun of Russians dying. Didn't they okay it on Facebook to make like statements of hate towards Russians or something, or did they ban that or something as Ukrainians were writing?
Sure.
statements
I
like
mean,
that
that's a
towards Russia?
that's like a Russophobic thing from a Western audience. I'm just trying to think if there's something I could latch onto that's a direct analogy where it's like, we're rolling out Gaza, we're rolling out a new Gaza. Ben Gurion should have finished the job. No such thing as a Palestinian people. These something on those level. It's like real Russians don't exist. Like, we're gonna wipe them all out. Something like that. I don't know if something on that level from Ukrainian officials.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I could go back and look, but I'm just super not interested. But I'm sure it has been said, because I feel like I recall people are posting quotes of like Americans during World War II that
I can imagine there's definitely some American politicians who could have said,
what was it?
there'll be no Germany standing once we're done, or something like that.
No. It was, where did this quote go? Why are chats so fucking hard to scroll and laggy? My God.
Is that the YouTube or DGG chat?
When we're done with them, the Japanese language will only be spoken in hell. Said by
Yeah.
a senior American military official after Pearl Harbor. And then we nuked them twice. But you know.
Yeah, that would be something analogous. So I think I agree with you. I wouldn't take these quotes as affirmatively saying, the Israeli government or the IDF is actively trying to do a genocide. I think that's like way too far based on the evidence available. And that's on like a kind of far side of trying to make a claim. I think the much kind of closer claims to make is it's like, okay, not genocide, because that's like, we're going to go and wipe these people out wherever they are. It's more on the side of ethnic cleansing, but even that's a little bit further than I think the nearest claim, which is basically pushing the people of Gaza out of Gaza. Maybe it's not because, we hate Gazans or whatever, but just we don't want them there, or we want that land or whatever. And
Okay,
and then just there's an even nearer claim than that, which is not that affirmatively Israel is trying to do this, but these statements are at a concerning level for a country that is planning to occupy this area and says that it's going to administrate it for some amount of time and then give it back. So that's, I think,
Okay.
the nearest claim.
So here's the question. Can we find in Israel's operations or statements something inconsistent with a country got attacked by another group? That country wants to go in and destroy or eliminate that group, and destroy or eliminate that group's ability to attack that country again. Can we find something inconsistent with that? Because I think all of Israel's actions can be very clearly and obviously explained by this.
Sure. I mean, if we're gonna gloss over the things that could point to war crimes, which could kind of chain up to pointing to, okay, there's a level of disregard that implies that they're interested
Not
in killing
necessarily.
a lot of civilians.
War crimes don't get us any closer to genocide as well.
Well,
Like very, because like you can commit tons of war crimes in a military conflict with no desire to do.
If they're
genocide
committing the
whatsoever.
types of war crimes that will lead to a lot of civilian deaths and destruction of homes that will force people to leave, I think those are the kind of things that could point toward, I'm not saying get you all the way there, but would be evidence toward saying we want maybe not even genocide, but ethnic cleansing, getting people out of the homes.
Sure. So ethnic cleansing, I don't even like the term ethnic cleansing.
Sure, that's
It's a
fine.
stupid term, 'cause
There's a lot more.
But, like,
there's a lot more
sure, I'm just
overall
saying
like mindset, but literally just getting people out of their homes, right? So I'm just going through every member of the Knesset and trying to see, have they positively stated that they want to resettle like North Gaza, basically. And I've already found 4 of the 120 Knesset members that have specifically said. Now, obviously, that doesn't directly translate into plans for the government, but my understanding is that members of the Knesset basically, are able to form policy. That's like, if it turned out that a third of the Knesset had specifically said that, even if there wasn't yet a plan, would that be concerning?
I think it'd be concerning, but not because it's genocide. Can't we be concerned about things that aren't
No, no,
like the top most
I'm
insane
literally not
crimes in
talking
the
about
world?
genocide. I'm literally not talking about genocide.
Oh, I mean, I think it would be.
I'm
I
saying
think
settling
settlements are
Northern
already
Gaza.
bad, and I think settlements are already bad. So settling anything more would be bad, including Gaza. Yes.
Sure. I mean, where's the line? So there's the line of like, okay, if this is
Hold
clearly
on, wait,
okay.
stop. Okay, hold on. This is my issue. I hate this so much. Okay,
Sure.
there is no line. Okay, it's not. This is peace. This is terrorism. This is war, and this is genocide. People want to put this on a spectrum, and when you've done that, you've already assassinated your brain's ability.
Well, wait,
to
no, I
comprehend
had a
everything.
specific type of line that I was drawing.
Sure. Okay. Well, let's. Okay. But what I don't like is that it feels like you've got military conflict, and when it's real bad, it's genocide. Genocide is a wholly separate thing.
Sure.
Israel could go in
Agreed.
and kill 5,000 Palestinians in a way that would constitute the crime of genocide.
Yep.
Israel could go in and kill 1,000 Palestinians in a way that would constitute the crime of genocide. Genocide is a wholly separate thing from war crimes, civilian deaths, war, terrorism, from all these other things. Okay. So in terms of like what would the line be? I don't know. The issue is that it's incredibly difficult to imagine right now because Israel has so many valid concerns and valid reasons to want to go in and fight that I don't even know why they would be genocidal. They don't need to even be genocidal
agreed.
to want to kill or destroy a whole bunch of Hamas members or a whole bunch of parts of the Gaza Strip. So I think it's the thing that makes it really hard is it feels like every single major operation that happens, Cast Lead, Protective Edge, or Operation Pillar of Defense, or the Swords of Iron, all of these seem to come after hundreds or thousands of rocket attacks by Hamas into Israel. That is hard to imagine why I need to inject any kind of genocidal intent here when we have so many appropriate causes for war. I just don't know where it would even come from. The same that I wouldn't imagine that America wants to go genocide Japan. They bomb Pearl Harbor. We've got a super legitimate cause for war here. I don't even know if I would necessarily say it gets more tricky, but I don't even know what I would necessarily say now. For instance, like the Arab states wanted to genocide all the Jews when they were fighting all the wars in 48 and 56 and 73 and 76. I don't even know if these were necessarily genocidal wars. You know, they might have just been trying to destroy Israel because they didn't want the country there. Because they don't like all the immigrants that are coming in. Yeah, I'm not saying it's impossible for genocide to happen. I don't understand the hyperfixation.
Sure,
It's such an
so
irrelevant point at the end of the day
I'm
because
still-
there's not much strong evidence pointing towards it, and there's so many other more important things to talk about.
Yeah, so I'm still not talking about genocide. That's still not
Sure.
my focus at all. So when I say line, what I was going to finish was line at which point, for example, the U.S. has to seriously evaluate what kind of strings we're attaching to military aid, right? So something like, okay, you have to severely rein in when your governmental officials are saying things that people will latch onto as this kind of intent, where they're saying we need to settle Northern Gaza. You guys can't be saying that at all, right? If you guys are going to be taking over this area and saying you're going to give it back and not settling it, then you can't have people in your government saying that. Something like that kind of line. So my question is, where's that line where the U.S. is going to say, like, guys, you got to actually get your shit in order?
I don't know. I mean, if they were to start building settlements, or if it seemed like there was actually huge support I mean, they have a right to express that opinion.
Well,
Like it's their members. Are we going to sit here and say like you don't have the right to say that you should bring settlements back to? I don't know. That's kind of a weird thing to say. If they would actually start building settlements in fucking Gaza, I think that's cause for a severe restriction of aid. Or if it looks like they're actually mobilizing to do that, I think it'd be really bad. But I mean, members of their Knesset are allowed to express their opinion. I mean,
well, they're allowed to express that, but I think if members of a government, if some fraction of members of a government are saying we should do exactly this, you can't call people who are saying, ooh, maybe Israel is going to do this. You can't call those people crazy, right?
I absolutely can. Just like how Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't dictate U.S. foreign policy, one or two members of the far-right parties in the Knesset also don't dictate what's happening with the actual war effort. If they did, I think things would look a lot different.
Sure, but she's okay. If she says that and Trump is president and it's like, 60-40 in Congress and the Senate, and a decent number of both of those, of both the House and the Senate were saying this, then it's genuinely moving in that direction.
Yeah, I think that
right?
would be troubling, and you would say as much. You'd say like, "Hey, this is troubling. I hope you guys don't do that." And then if they do start to do it, then you probably start conditioning aid or something. Sure.
So it sounds like for you, your line would be on some actual action of they've started building settlements. It wouldn't be
Or like at least a
some
movement
clear
in that
plan
direction. It wouldn't
like
just be like 4 or 5 members of their Congress, of their parliamentary body, saying things
mm-hmm,
after like a huge terrorist attack their country. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
I don't think it would be that.
Okay. All right, I'll just move on to the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, which is this question over human shields. So I was interested in your conversation with Joe over this, which it seems like you maintain the position that Israel, by international law, needs to treat human shields as civilians. They're still civilians. They still have to be factored into any calculations around proportionality versus some military advantage. But at the same time, it feels like there's like a sneaky principle that's making its way in, where you say it's because of Hamas, or Hamas is the one who's morally culpable for putting these civilians in this situation. And it seems like some of the moral culpability is being taken off of the IDF for bombing those civilians in that situation of being human shields.
Correct.
Okay.
All of the moral culpability would be taken off the IDF, and all of the moral culpability would be assigned to Hamas, is what I would say.
So is that in the situation that that the IDF is still properly doing those calculations, treating those human shields as civilians, or would that still be true even if they weren't doing those calculations?
If they weren't doing the calculations, then I would say that Israel starts to suffer and has responsibility or culpability.
Okay. Okay, I think that's fair.
Basically, you have an obligation to shield your civilian population from attack. You have an obligation to try to protect your civilian population in times of war to make sure that they're not being destroyed by the enemy. If you're failing to do that, if you fail to protect your civilian population, that is a violation of international law. You are failing to uphold I think this is under additional protocol. It's either additional protocol 1 or 2. Actually, I think it might be both. It's Article 58 of Additional Protocol 1. The parties to the conflict shall, to the maximum extent feasible, without prejudice to Article 49 of the Fourth Convention, endeavor to remove the civilian population, individual civilians, and civilian objects under their control from the vicinity of military objectives, avoid locating military objectives within or near densely populated areas, and take the other necessary precautions to protect the civilian population, individual civilians, and civilian objects under their control against the dangers resulting from military operations. This is an Additional Protocol 1, I'm pretty sure, and Additional Protocol 2 under Article 13. There's also protection of the civilian population, saying that they shall enjoy protections against the dangers of risk of military operations. They shall not be the object of attack. They shall enjoy the protections afforded by this part. I think it's for belligerents, actually. So the Article 58 under Additional Protocol 1 basically means that you have to protect your civilian population. Hamas fails to do that. On Israel's side, now when they go to attack, they still have to obey things of distinction. So, for instance, you can't just start killing civilians at large because of whatever. But if you identify a military target and it's commingled with civilians, and Hamas is utilizing that to try to, afford them some protection, which would be human shielding, you have an obligation to do a proportionality assessment to make sure that the amount of civilians killed is, worth the concrete military advantage that's enjoyed by targeting whatever thing, and then you go from there. But in that case, like, Israel is conducting itself according to the rules of war, even if they are killing civilians in a way that is 100% wholly consistent with international law, and Hamas is the one that's failing to conduct themselves in a way that's wholly consistent with international law. So I would say even in the case where 100 civilians are killed to kill 50 Hamas operatives, Israel has no moral culpability for the deaths of those civilians, and Hamas has 100% the moral culpability if they're utilizing them to gain a military advantage by shielding their military objectives.
And the proportionality is respected. Do you think that Israel should be compelled to substantiate some or any of those claims around military targets?
I don't know. I don't know if anybody is ever expected to do those things, ever. Unless they're, like, formally charged with a crime internationally. I don't know if that has ever been the case, where you have to make... Like, those things are by nature, a lot of those are secret. Like, there's a... Oh, fuck. There's actually a name for this particular type of thing. I think it's a 3-letter abbreviation that stands for the actual cost of a military objective for a civilian life. But these numbers are secret, and militaries don't publish these for obvious reasons. You don't want people to know exactly what how much they would need to shield a particular object. But,
Yeah. Well, I
yeah,
guess
I mean, like,
so either publish or provide to like the U.S. military, U.S. intelligence for them to make a
well, U.S.
more
military
private
intelligence doesn't
determination.
matter. Nobody cares about that because Israel already has done that at times. And people just say the U.S. will just suck up to Israel and not actually hold them to account. So,
I mean, I am concerned with. I'm sure you've talked about this. It's called the Gospel, Israel's like new AI targeting tool.
yeah, I've heard that. It sounds a little cringe. I don't know if they're actively utilizing that in the field or not.
So
yet, but
yeah, so I think they talked about. I could try to pull the link for you, but it was something like they managed to like double or triple their generation of targets using this, and it's concerning that now it's not even on analysts to come up with a reason for a target. They still need manual approval, so it's not like there's just, Skynet drones going out and just killing people totally like AI controlled. But the AI is not necessarily something you can kind of backtrack and even say why exactly was this determination made. It's still manually like reviewed, but the speed at which they're increasing their number of targets, I think, is concerning about how, if those calculations even could be done in a situation like this.
I mean, it could be good, it could be bad. I don't think you should write it off just because it's AI. Like, it could be incredibly good. Maybe generating 100 targets is better when human intelligence could only generate 10 targets, and all of those had huge cost of life for civilians attached to it. Maybe the additional AI generated targets don't have the same civilian cost of life. I have no idea that I'd ever see.
Yeah. Do you think there should be? I mean, I'd be curious to know if anything has ever been released in terms of those conversations ever being had, or any kind of best practices within the IDF of like what number of civilians, for a strike that hits one Hamas
I
operative,
don't know if
something like
any
that.
military has ever released those numbers. I don't know if that stuff would ever just be released publicly because it's such a
Yeah.
sensitive.
I mean, if it turned out that literally their numbers were, I don't know, 30-1 or 50-1 or 100-1 or whatever would be past the line of what's kind of accepted.
Well, the thing is, it's not just going to be number of civilians per Hamas militant. It might be how important that Hamas militant is.
Of course,
it might
of
be what
course.
is the risk to your military. It might there might be a whole bunch of other things. Yeah.
But if that were released and it turned out that it were, I mean, I'm actually curious. Is there some specific standard? I know the general concept behind the proportionality, but
I have no
is there
idea.
some
Maybe
actual
in some
formula?
leaked. Someone's saying that in the Iraq-Afghanistan leaks, some of that information was available, but I don't know.
I mean, if it turns out that what the kind of worldwide accepted practice is something like, 100 civilians to one low-level Hamas operative, not some officer or leader or whatever, would that be something that, I don't know, us among the left or whatever of the international community should demand some kind of further action on? Because if it's the case that it's such a lax number, then I think that's not a sufficient protection for civilians.
Possibly, but remember, okay, this has to be considered at all points in time, okay? International humanitarian law, and specifically the law of armed conflict, okay, is balanced on a razor edge for protecting two different things. It has to be the protection, the general protections of civilians, and it has to be for the ability for nations to conduct war. If you lose either of those things, all of it becomes pointless. Because if nations discover, my proportionality has to always be like 1-to-1, and my opponents just discovered that if they shoot rockets at me from buildings, I can never attack them. Well, this is stupid. I'm never following international law again. This is a whole worthless apparatus, and I'm just going to march and do what the fuck I want because I'm going to get fucked anyway, so who the fuck cares? That's the worst case scenario. People always think that the worst case scenario of international law is that, oh no, they're being too lenient on allowing more civilian deaths, but there's another worst case scenario of being too strict on it, where you make it so that basically you're telling states you guys can never basically conduct warfare against guerrilla operatives. You can never conduct warfare against people that utilize civilian populations as shields, and now you've emboldened those groups, and now you've made other nations just not give a fuck about international law. It's like, oh well, fuck it, we're gonna violate it anyway, so.
Yeah, so that was kind of my follow-up of, if it's the case that in this situation, so let's say just whether or not Hamas was particularly trying to put civilians in harm's way, but just the number of civilians living in some small area made it so that in order for Israel to carry out their objective of destroying Hamas, that they would necessarily have to go beyond the kind of current conception international standard, that for them that standard should be loosened so that they have the capacity to conduct war. Is that something that you personally?
No, I don't think the standard should be
Okay.
loosened. Maybe the standards, maybe they need to be changed, but they shouldn't be applied selectively in different situations. No.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. I agree with that. Okay, I think those are my main points I wanted to hit. Yeah, did you have any questions for me about any of those, or anything that you wanted to put more pushback on anything I said?
Nope. But I love you.
All right. Take care, buddy.
Be careful. Bye.
All right.